Iowa State was absolutely snubbed for making the Women's College World Series field of 64 over the weekend, and we're talking about how this happened, why this happened, coming up today on Locked On Cyclones.
You are Locked On Cyclones, your daily podcast on the Iowa State Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Shout out to you for being here every single day, making this your first watch or listen of the day. I appreciate it more than you know. Whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcasting platform, be sure to hit subscribe so we can prove once and for all that it is, in fact, a Cyclone state. Today, we're talking about the women's softball team being snubbed from the College World Series tournament that goes on every year for this softball sport, how that's kind of a load. I'm not really sure how that happened. Then we're going to talk about Rocco not being ranked in the top 10. Definitely feel like he deserves to be in that top 10. It maybe even number 1. And finally, a little clip from Noah Pauley at the Senior Bowl came out, and it's, I think, a perfect representation of what the Iowa State football team is, what they're all about. We'll talk about that. But before we do, today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. So let's talk about this Women's College World Series situation and where Iowa State sits. Now, this field of 64 came out. The bracket is now set. This is the regionals, then it'll advance to the super regionals, and then it's the final 8. That's kind of what the Women's College World Series is. You know, that's kind of how it works. I saw the graphic get put up, and I was like, okay, Iowa State's got to be in here somewhere. For a little context, they did fall to Arizona in the semis in the Big 12 tournament over the weekend after beating BYU. So unable to advance to the finals, but nonetheless, I felt very good about where Iowa State was at with the historic season they had, third in the Big 12 and 30-plus wins for like the third time. Arguably one of the best seasons that Iowa State softball has ever seen. However, I had to reread the bracket about 4 times because I was like, I think I'm missing. Where is I feel like I know they're here. Like, which region are they in? Took a little bit more researching because I couldn't believe my own eyes. Iowa State did not make the 64, which is wild because from the Big 12, 4 teams made it in. Texas Tech, Arizona, Oklahoma State, and Arizona State, those 4 teams. And obviously, Iowa State did fall to Arizona. But on the year, 2-1 against Arizona State, 2-1 against Oklahoma State, 3-0 against UCF, who, also made the tournament there. I mean, that's just directly against teams that are in the tournament, Iowa State, those are all winning records. And then you look at what Iowa State did finish-wise in the Big 12 this year, 3rd overall. I mean, that's pretty good. I couldn't believe why would Iowa State not make it? So I did some digging, and this RPI thing kept coming up. And what RPI is, basically, it's a metric that's used that the NCAA or whatever uses as a portion of their kind of criteria as far as getting into the tournament. And so Iowa State did not do so well in this RPI kind of statistic. This is the rating percentage index. Basically, what it is, it's like this conglomerate of a team's winning percentage, the team's opponent's winning percentage, and the team's opponent's winning percentage. So you can kind of think of it like a big old tree. If like the trunk is the winning percentage, and then the branches are the opponent's winning percentages, and then the little twigs are the opponent's winning percentages. How big is your tree? How full is your tree? Is kind of how I look at it, right? Like if you've got a little Charlie Brown Christmas tree, probably not going to make the tournament. If you've got a big old, oak tree or, whatever a really solid tree would be, that you got, I guess, a better chance at making the tournament, but I can't say you're going to guarantee to get in because Iowa State, I felt like, had a really solid year and still did not make the tournament. Now, I will say there were some pretty ugly losses and a couple run rules and things of that nature, but 31-23 officially on the year, 15-9 in the conference. That's a 62.5% win rate. 11-5 at home, 11-9 away, 9-9 neutral. No, those numbers don't necessarily jump off the page as like this team is like a title contender. Like it's not what Iowa State men's basketball was in like January, where the numbers were wild, right? They were very, very exciting. I looked through kind of the schedule once again, and Iowa State did struggle early. Stony Brook, FIU, Indiana, 3 straight losses for the year, and Indiana in 5 innings. So just right away, not great. I will say there were a few games that were canceled. I wonder if Iowa State was able to pick up wins in those, if they would have a better, tree, because, they play an opponent and then technically, and then what does that opponent's tree look like, which is a factor in this whole RPI deal. But over the course of the year, Iowa State certainly got better. They certainly did. And they performed very well, I feel like, in the conference, especially for kind of what an Iowa State team has been known to do. Very exciting story for the Cyclones, just unable to get the attention of, I guess, kind of the committee. As far as the RPI ranking, I do also have this up here. Iowa State ranked 65th on the year as far as RPI, right behind like Fresno State, Belmont, Mercer, UNC Greensboro, Stetson. Iowa was ranked 58th. And Iowa State split, I believe, with Iowa is what they did. I believe they played them twice and split with them. Nonetheless, just not enough for Iowa State to get in. And I guess it is what it is, but it's not cool. I feel like Iowa State should have gotten in, but it is at least a step in the right direction for this softball program. This is a great year that the Cyclones can build off of, especially when you consider just how young this team is. We talked so much about, like all of the freshmen that were kind of leading this team when we talked about it before the BYU game. And that's where you want to be. You want to be young and you want to be solid. Did they make the tournament? No. Did they make this, regional situation? No, they didn't quite get in there. But at the end of the day, you got next year too. Like it's not going to be the exact same team, but who knows? Maybe these freshmen, obviously, another year of development. You got your sophomores or juniors and whatnot. They'll be sophomores, your juniors or seniors, excuse me. The freshmen coming in, maybe they're going to make another impact. So maybe they'll be even better next year. And this is also going to act as bulletin board material for this team moving forward. Remember what we did last year and how good it felt and how good we were doing. And then we were just kind of disrespected, left out of the tournament. We've got to play better than that or do better over the course of the season than we did even last year, which was a historic year, a very, very good year for the Cyclones, just still not enough. And so that only raises the bar even further for this team moving forward, which is exciting. And all of these players come back with a chip on their shoulder, and they come back, next spring, and in theory, absolutely dominate, and then you make that field and you make the super regionals, and then you make it to, I believe it's in Oklahoma City is where they play that, those final 8. But that's, it's unfortunate for this year because it doesn't make a lot of sense. Iowa State definitely should have been in, beat teams that are in. Unfortunate as far as the rankings, but significantly better at the end of the year than at the beginning. Really good conference, series record, obviously 6 of 8. BYU and Houston, the 2 that they couldn't quite get done with or over. Didn't make the conference tournament, finals. That doesn't help. So there were things that Iowa State could have done better, but overall, a very, very good year and just not able to get in. But that's I guess that's the end of this chapter, right? The next chapter, next season, could be so much better, which is always super, super exciting. I think Iowa State sports in general are on the up and up just after football season. and basketball season. Like, we're looking at really good things coming in the future with this team being so young. I am not worried moving forward. I don't think this was the last hurrah. If anything, it was the very beginning of what this softball team could be. Now, that being said, we're talking about the future a little bit, and the future of Iowa State football at the quarterback position is Rocco. We're talking about him not being ranked in the top 10 coming up right after this. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. And that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more. And managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. So the success of the Iowa State softball team this year was invigorating. It certainly was. But the football team kind of did the same thing. You're here with Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And we are taking a look at the guy who kind of runs that ship. Now, I will say, Iowa State is not a program that is like spearheaded by one dude. Obviously, even if you were to look at Matt Campbell and the coaching staff, I think that they would say, like, this is a whole team effort. Like, it's not just, not just Matt Campbell and whatever. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying we're talking about Rocco Beck not being ranked in the top 10 of Greg McElroy's top 10 college quarterbacks entering the 2025 season, and how I think it is a complete abomination. I don't love it. Before we kind of get into the list here, who is Greg McElroy? If you're not familiar, went to college at Alabama, graduated in 2010, then spent about 2-3 years in the NFL, a couple of years with the Jets, and then Cincinnati Bengals, practice squad member, offseason guy, whatever. It is what it is. Obviously, from Alabama, not probably going to know too much about Iowa State. So let's talk about those top 10 guys. Haynes King from Georgia Tech rounds out the top 10. Then DJ Lagway from Florida, 9. Sawyer Robertson, Baylor, Big 12 guy, at 8. Lenora Sellers from South Carolina, 7. Carson Beck, Miami, 6. Garrett Nussmeier, LSU, 5. Drew Aller, Penn State, 4. Sam Levitt, Arizona State, 3. John Mateer, Oklahoma, 2, excuse me. And then Cade Klubnik, Clemson, 1. So you've got an Arizona State Big 12 quarterback. You've got Baylor in this list as well. So 2 Big 12 schools in this list. I guess I would be I don't feel like that's a lot of respect for the Big 12 unless I, for some reason, am blanking. Nope, that's it. Just those 2. And so nonetheless, Sam Levitt, we know how good Sam Levitt is. Let's, go from the top here. Cade Klubnik, very good. John Mateer, very good. This isn't a normal, I would say, list, but I mean, they're very good players. Sam Levitt, we know just how good he is. We were going into the Big 12 championship game last year. I felt like a lot of the attention was on Scadaboo, which rightfully so, but Sam Levitt really surprised me in that game, also missing top wide receiver, and I mean, slung it all over the yard against a very good secondary in Iowa State. What they had, I believe they were top 3 at the time going into that game in passing yards allowed, and basically secondary wise, just very, very good secondary. Sam Levitt tore it up. I mean, really did. Drew Aller, Penn State, makes the playoffs and whatnot. Garrett Nussmeier, I remember the LSU USC game last year. Nussmeier, I immediately was like, whoa, that guy can sling it. I mean, he can really zip on that ball and put it where he wants. That was a fun game to watch. He's a good quarterback. I don't know if he's necessarily better than Rocco. We're kind of getting into that territory here. Carson Beck last year did have a rough year. I mean, he did went in kind of as the guy, and I don't think he kept that title. Now going down to Miami. And it's tough. It really is. I don't know if his play last year, and that's what Greg McElroy, why they put him at 6 here. I don't know if it's because of like the factors in the team around him, or if it's Carson Beck. And I think that here McElroy was saying, all right, well, Beck is in a new situation now. I think he's capable of being that dude. And I think he'll do well down in Miami. So I guess, you can't, that's a tough one because it's kind of like on potential. Then Lenora Sellers, I'm not going to even lie. I know South Carolina very good. I just don't have a lot of tape experience with Sellers. So that's going to be a name that I'm going to want to kick out of this list. Sawyer Robertson, dog, Baylor. Obviously, we know that. DJ Lagway, a guy, from Florida. I wouldn't say he's feels a little high there, but okay. Haynes King from Georgia Tech. I think there are 5 names on this list. Like if you were to take this list and kind of move the names around and be able to put new guys in, I think there were 5 names that I would put below Rocco Beck just going into this year. Now, I do understand that if Greg McElroy is taking a large portion of this and saying, well, it's the situation they're in, not just pure talent and this, that, I can see why there would be a large assumption from an Iowa State quarterback or for an Iowa State quarterback to take a step back. Coming off of last season, you're missing now 2,300 yards basically, or whatever it is, in Knoll and Higgins. Like just 2 dudes, 1,100 yards each, only duo in the entire league or in the entire, NCAA last year, which is a wild stat to think about. But I can see why there would be some apprehension to take a guy or to put a guy in the top 10 here, and they don't have either of their top 2 wide receiver options from last year. I can see that. I do think, however, we've said this before, that the wide receiver room for Iowa State this year is going to be solid. Now, I know they're their own people, Chase Sowell and Xavier Townsend, but they are very similar builds to Higgins and Knoll. And I think they're very solid from what I've heard, especially, of Xavier Townsend, him being electric. Chase Sowell, I guess, is dealing with some injuries during this spring period, so wasn't quite able to open it up all the way. Very solid duo of wide receivers. And then you've got more guys in the depth chart that I don't know exactly who is going to make the biggest impact, but you've got depth there. And then beyond that, we're looking at a very, very good tight end room with, the opportunities to open that up into the passing game being beyond, I like beyond your wildest dreams, basically, is kind of how I'm looking at this. Like, how many tight ends are we putting out there? And then all of them very, very good. Like we can move some things around here and do some very exciting things with those tight ends on top of the running backs as well. So, wide receiver, tight end, running back, I think Iowa State has a very good situation. And I think Rocco is an unbelievable thrower of the ball, but also a runner. I mean, I can't tell you how many times last season Rocco's legs saved Iowa State multiple times. Sneaks, maybe it's a 10, 3rd and 10 or 2nd and 10 or whatever. He picks up a few or picks up the first down. I was very shocked to see. I mean, I'm used to seeing maybe Rocco comes in at like 9 on this list or 10 or whatever. Just kind of like, oh, we saw kind of what you did last year. No, this is not right. In my opinion, I definitely think he is a top 7 at least quarterback in the NCAA. Another thing we haven't even talked about is his toughness. Just remember back to the Big 12 game when he got absolutely rocked. I believe he came out for a few plays, but then finished the game like, yeah. And he's an unbelievable leader. He's a top 10 quarterback in my book every day of the week, twice on Saturdays, if you will. So, Greg McElroy, if you're watching, which I'm sure you are, no, nothing personal, but I just disagree here. I think that Rocco needs to be in that list, me personally. We're going to go ahead and stay in the football conversation, but kind of pivot away from one player and talk about the team the team as a whole, coming up right after this. So we just got done talking about Rocco Becht here at Locked On Cyclones, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. But now let's talk about the whole team conceptually here, because, you know, we've talked a lot about Noah Pauley, and there's this clip now that I'm seeing of him down at the Senior Bowl, talking about Higgins and Noel, and what he says, I thought stood out to me. He says, I think the biggest thing is that they are big team guys, all about the team, want to win games, not about stats. We've talked about this. I also believe I talked about this on Locked On Texans when they had me come on and kind of talk about those wide receivers and what Houston is kind of getting. But basically, it didn't really matter if it was a 3-catch night for Higgins and a 10-catch night for Noel, or if it was the other way around. Both guys were completely locked in and totally fine with that. They would find other ways to really pick up not the slack, but the lack of offensive production for Noel. Maybe it's like a big punt return type situation. If Higgins, it's a couple huge blocks down the field, whatever it is. Those two guys were very much not concerned about overall stats, which is wild because they still both racked up wild numbers, but more so about getting wins and about the team. Now, we're not here to talk about those two guys specifically because, like I just said, they are now Texans. They are not Cyclones anymore. But that concept, that idea, that mindset is Iowa State athletics, Iowa State football in a nutshell, in my opinion. And so I wanted to kind of bring it up here to talk about, this is what I expect of this team this year as well. I think, it's going to be difficult with the transfer portal. And, there's this there's different cultures in every building across the entire United States. And I guess really every building in the entire world, which is totally unrelated. But the point is that you bring in these guys, into high school or from high school even, but also from other colleges all over, and you have to get them to buy in to the Iowa State way. And I think that what Matt Campbell has is very, very strong. What these assistant coaches, kind of preach as well is very, very strong. And it's not something that's impossible. Especially because I think that when a lot of the guys come and visit Iowa State and decide that they want to transfer to Iowa State, it is partially because of the culture that is set. So they kind of know what they're getting themselves into. They're not, it's not like Iowa State is saying, well, this is going to be all about you when you come here. We're going to draw up every play for you specifically. We'll make sure you're always in the game at the big moments, and that every practice is completely tailored around your schedule, and whatever you want to do is what we will do. And then they get here, and then like, all right, well, now it is the team. It is absolutely about winning. It's not about anything you do specifically, although you are expected to individually perform very well. It's not necessarily about how many receptions you have or yards you have. Like that's not what matters. We're just trying to increase the win column number. They're not dealing with that culture shock. Guys are coming into the building and understanding this is what Cyclone football is. This is exciting to me. This is the kind of environment I want to play in. This is the kind of team that I want to win with and lose with. Even, Matt Campbell talks about losing and the opportunity of what you can learn through failure. So they kind of know what they're getting themselves into. And that is great because I could see why bringing in guys from different different cultures could be challenging for a team like Iowa State, who has to deal with so much of this culture. Just it feels very different. It's like what Matt Campbell said at the end of the Pop-Tart Bowl. Like there aren't very many teams left in college football, but we've got one of names. Like it does feel different. It feels very just it stands out amongst the rest. Let's put it that way. That being said, all of that, you're seeing it. You're seeing it over the course of the last few years that this culture is becoming very prevalent. And I think that this team this year, you're going to have, a few transfers, obviously, at the wide receiver position that are going to be filling in for this kind of lack of production now because they're not on the team, Higgins and Knoll. And then, obviously, across the whole building, there are plenty of transfers and plenty of freshmen coming in. This is where Iowa State wins, in my opinion. You win with the culture. You win with it being about the team. And I think the Higgins and Knoll, the success they had at Iowa State and the success that they will have, obviously moving up to the NFL, but then also at the NFL level, that shows, kind of every Iowa State player and every player that could come to Iowa State that's looking at potentially being recruited by Iowa State or coming to Iowa State through high school or through the transfer portal. You can have success in a program that is not only about individual success. It is about the team. It is about Iowa State getting wins, Iowa State succeeding in this facet or this way. But there are still guys that come out of that and see major success. And you saw the mindset completely modeled in their game, in their numbers for every game. And you heard about it in the locker room with how great of leaders these guys were. It didn't matter. It just didn't matter what their stats were. They found a way to put the team first, and that was what made Iowa State great. That's what gave Iowa State that historic season last year. Obviously, looking to do the same thing again this year. I think that this team can get it done. I think Higgins and Knoll left a very lasting impact on the building, and I think that not only the wide receiver transfers, but every other transfer, I suppose, first, and then every player that's on the team from last year. The culture is very strong. We aren't sure exactly who's going to be the leaders that step up in this new team, this new model, but I am confident that this idea of the team will reign. It will reign strong. Like it will be still the same kind of motto for this Cardinal and Gold football team that plays in Ames, Iowa, every whatever Saturdays, and Ireland even next year. That's very exciting. And I saw this video and immediately thought, yeah, that checks out. Like that is what being an Iowa State Cyclone is all about. Very, selfless team. What can I do for, as a wide receiver, like not taking any plays off, blocking downfield. That's very, I'm not surprised to see that from Paulie talking about Higgins and Knoll at all. Part of the reason why we were so successful last year, without a doubt, in my opinion. All right, Cyclone fans, you made it to the end of the episode. Shout out to you. If you haven't hit subscribe yet, be sure to do that so we can prove once and for all that is, in fact, a Cyclone state. Until next time, Cyclone fans, sayonara.